The first big order. 1 year after she started, Mary received an email that changed everything. A multinational sustainable fashion company wanted to use her products in a global collection. This wasn't a small order, it was 10,000 units. Mary read the email 3 times, expecting to wake up. Was this real? Was this possible? Could her small operation deliver 10,000 units? Mary gathered her team. Now there were 3 of them. They ran the numbers. They talked to their suppliers. Yes, it was possible. It would be tight. It would be stressful. But it was possible.
Mary realized she had reached a turning point. That large order validated everything. It proved the model worked. It proved there was a real market. It proved she had made the right decision to start a business after retirement, leave consulting behind, and create something of her own. That order wasn't just about money. It was proof that she had made the right choice.
Negotiating with corporate clients. Delivering 10,000 units forced Mary to learn how to negotiate with corporate clients in a different way. It was no longer about selling a product. It was about being a reliable partner. Mary had to ensure quality, deadlines, and constant communication. She had to deal with requirements she had never faced before: certifications, audits, compliance. But here, her corporate logistics experience was crucial. She knew how to operate in a corporate environment. She knew how to speak their language. She knew how to manage expectations. She knew how to solve problems without making a drama out of them.
Those 35 years of experience, which had seemed useless when she was laid off, were now exactly what set her apart from other small producers. Mary realized that her competitive advantage wasn't having the newest technology. It was having the wisdom of someone who had seen it all before. Learning the value of a network. As Mary grew, she realized something important. Her network was her greatest asset. Those 35 years in the corporate world had left behind an invisible legacy. People who trusted her, respected her, and wanted to help her. An old colleague introduced her to an angel investor. A former client became her business mentor. A former supplier became her strategic partner. Mary realized that a real network, people who trusted her, not her job title, was far more valuable than any LinkedIn network.
And she had built that network over decades. A young entrepreneur would take years to build what Mary already had. That advantage wasn't technical. It wasn't about knowing how to use the newest tool. It was about having people who believed in you, wanted to see you succeed, and were willing to help.
The wisdom, not to panic. There were moments when Mary wanted to give up. There were months when sales dropped. There were clients who didn't pay on time. There were suppliers who failed her. There were competitors offering lower prices. There were times when Mary thought, maybe I should have taken that consulting job. Maybe I should have just retired peacefully. But then she remembered something she had learned over 35 years. Crises are temporary. She had seen entire companies collapse and rebuild. She had seen markets change completely. She had seen people lose everything and start over again. That wisdom, knowing that nothing is ever as catastrophic as it seems at first, was an advantage no young entrepreneur had. Mary didn't panic. She took a deep breath, analyzed the problem, and found a solution. Because she had done it hundreds of times before.
The long-term vision. Mary began to realize that her way of thinking was different from that of her younger competitors. They wanted to grow fast. They wanted to go viral. They wanted to become billion-dollar companies overnight. Mary wanted to build a solid business that would last. She was in no hurry. She knew that building something real takes time. She knew that rapid growth often means structural problems that explode later. Mary preferred to grow slowly, solidify each stage, and make sure the foundation was strong. That long-term vision, born from having lived long enough to see full economic cycles, was a strategic advantage. Mary wasn't competing for short-term attention. She was building a business that could last for decades. And that perspective changed everything. It changed the decisions she made. It changed how she treated her clients, her suppliers, and her team. Because she knew that lasting relationships were more valuable than quick wins. The final lesson about age. 2 years after starting, Mary stopped to reflect. She had a business that generated consistent income.
She had a team that believed in what they were doing. She had clients who trusted her. She was creating real environmental impact, turning tons of waste into valuable products. And it had all started because she was laid off at 64. Mary realized that age had not been a disadvantage, it had been a hidden advantage. Because age brought experience, it brought a network, it brought wisdom, it brought calm, it brought long-term vision, it brought the ability to listen and negotiate without feeling anxious for immediate results. It brought the ability not to panic in the face of crises. Mary realized the market had tried to convince her she was obsolete. But the truth was the opposite. She had exactly what the market needed, even if it didn't know it yet. And now Mary understood that making money in retirement was not about competing with younger people. It was about using her experience in a different way, in niches where experience was a competitive advantage. What age brought as an advantage? Mary, an older woman, began making a list, not of disadvantages, but of the advantages that age had brought her.
The first one was obvious, a real network. It wasn't about having 5,000 LinkedIn connections. It was about having people who had known her for 20, 30 years. People who knew she was reliable. People who wanted to help her not because she held an important title, but because she had mattered to them at some point. That network was immensely valuable. An old colleague introduced her to an angel investor. A former client became her mentor. A former supplier became her strategic partner.
Mary realized that those relationships built over decades were her greatest asset. A young entrepreneur would take years to build what she already had. And it wasn't about money, it was about trust. It was about having people who believed in you before you had even succeeded. The wisdom not to panic. The second advantage was more subtle. Wisdom. Mary had seen crises before. She had seen markets change. She had seen companies collapse and rebuild. She had seen people lose everything and start over again. That wisdom, knowing that nothing is ever as catastrophic as it seems at first, was an advantage no young entrepreneur had.
When a crisis came, Mary didn't panic. She took a deep breath, analyzed the problem, and found a solution. Because she had done it hundreds of times before. Her younger competitors, when faced with a crisis, often gave up. They thought it was the end. Mary knew it was just an obstacle. And obstacles can be worked around, overcome, and turned into opportunities. That calm, that perspective was pure gold in a fast-moving world. The ability to listen and negotiate. The third advantage was listening. Over 35 years, Mary had learned that most people want to be heard, not sold to. When she talked to a client, she wasn't trying to close a quick sale. She was trying to understand the problem. She was trying to listen.
And when you truly listen, people can feel it. They trust you. They want to do business with you. Mary had also learned how to negotiate without anxiety. She wasn't in a rush. She knew a good deal takes time to build. She knew it's better to lose one sale than to make a bad deal. She knew lasting relationships are more valuable than quick wins.
That ability to negotiate calmly without desperation was a strategic advantage. Her younger competitors often accepted anything just to make a sale. Mary was selective, and because she was selective, her deals were better. The long-term vision. The fourth advantage was long-term vision. Mary wasn't competing for short-term attention. She didn't want to go viral. She didn't want to get rich quickly. She wanted to build a solid business that would last. She knew that rapid growth often creates structural problems that blow up later. She knew that building something real takes time.
That perspective, born from having lived long enough to see full economic cycles, was a strategic advantage. Mary didn't panic over short-term fluctuations.
Don't compete with the young. Focus on niche markets. Mary learned a crucial lesson. She shouldn't try to compete with younger entrepreneurs in their own game. They were faster, more plugged into trends, and more willing to work 18-hour days. But Mary had something they didn't, experience in specific niches. She knew the textile waste market wasn't flashy. It wasn't the kind of market that attracted young entrepreneurs. It was a boring technical market that required long-term relationships with small factories.
And that was exactly the kind of market where Mary's experience made the difference. Mary realized her strategy wasn't to compete globally. It was to dominate a specific niche. It was to be the person factories called when they had a waste problem. It was to be the person sustainable companies called when they wanted a reliable supplier. Using purpose as the engine, Mary realized her biggest advantage wasn't financial, it was emotional. She had purpose. She wasn't just trying to make money, she was trying to solve a real problem, the pollution caused by textile waste. That purpose, rooted in her long-standing passion for sustainability, was what kept her going during the hard moments.
When sales dropped, when a client cancelled, when a supplier failed her, Mary didn't quit because she knew she was doing something that mattered. Her younger competitors often gave up when the money didn't come in fast enough.
Mary kept going because she had purpose, and purpose she knew was more powerful than money. Purpose was what kept you up at night, not out of worry, but out of excitement. Purpose was what attracted people who wanted to work with you. Purpose was what set you apart from everyone else. And purpose was something Mary had in abundance.
Asking for help without shame. Mary learned something many young entrepreneurs take years to understand. Asking for help is not weakness, it's intelligence. She looked for mentors. She looked for programs for mature entrepreneurs. She looked for support networks. And she discovered there was far more support available than she had imagined. There were incubators focused on social businesses. There were mentoring programs for entrepreneurs over 50. There were women's entrepreneurship networks. Mary realized the market was beginning to recognize senior entrepreneurs as an important segment, and that recognition opened doors.
Mary wasn't ashamed to say, "I don't know this, can you help me?" She was ashamed to pretend she knew, and that humility, born from having lived long enough to know nobody knows everything, was an advantage. Because when you ask for help, people want to help. When you're honest about your limits, people trust you. When you're vulnerable, people connect with you.
Dealing with ageism in a practical way, Mary faced ageism many times. Banks that didn't want to lend, investors who doubted her, partners who thought she was too old. But Mary learned to deal with it in a practical way. Results speak louder than age.
When she showed her numbers, steady growth, satisfied clients, real environmental impact, the ageism faded. Because numbers don't lie, because success has no age.
Mary realized the best way to fight ageism wasn't with arguments. It was with results. It was with concrete proof that she could deliver. And that practical approach, focusing on results instead of defending herself, was far more effective than any speech about age equality.
Mary didn't waste energy trying to convince people who didn't believe in her. She simply kept moving forward, built her business, and let the results speak. The freedom that comes with autonomy. 2.5 years after starting, Mary stopped to reflect. She had a business that generated steady income. She had a team that believed in what they were doing. She had clients who trusted her. She had real environmental impact, and more importantly, she had freedom.
Freedom to make her own decisions. Freedom to turn down clients who didn't align with her values. Freedom to work the hours she wanted. Freedom to take vacations whenever she wanted. That freedom, coming from owning her own business with Mintish, was something she had never had in 35 years of corporate life. As a director, she had status, she had a salary, she had power, but she didn't have freedom. She had to be available 24/7. She had to respond to demands that didn't make sense. She had to follow policies she disagreed with. Now, as an entrepreneur, she had less money than she did as a director, but she had something far more valuable, freedom, and Mary knew that at 66, freedom mattered more than money.
The final message about age and entrepreneurship. Mary realized her story wasn't about a woman who got laid off and found another job. It was about a woman who got laid off and discovered she could create something far better than what she had lost. It was about a woman who realized that at 66, she wasn't at the end of her career. She was at the beginning of a new one. It was about a woman who understood that being older wasn't a disadvantage. It was a hidden advantage. Mary knew there were millions of people like her, people who had been laid off, people who were unhappy in their jobs, people who wanted to do something meaningful, people who thought it was too late. And Mary wanted them to know it's not too late, it's never too late.
At 66, you're not getting out of the game. You're stepping into a new one, a game where your rules, your experience, and your wisdom are exactly what the market needs. And that message, coming from someone who had lived it, was far more powerful than any empty motivation. The market's recognition. 3 years after she started, Mary received an award. It wasn't a major award, it was local recognition for sustainable business. But for Mary, it meant everything.
It meant the market was recognizing what she had built. It meant her idea wasn't just viable, it was relevant. Mary stepped onto the stage to receive the award and looked out at the audience. She saw her clients, she saw her suppliers, she saw her team. She saw the people who had believed in her when no one else did. And she realized that the award wasn't just hers. It belonged to everyone who had walked that journey with her. Mary thought about the woman she had been 3 years earlier, sitting at home, afraid, convinced it was too late. And she realized that woman had been brave enough to try, and that courage had changed everything. That award was proof that making money in retirement isn't about luck. It's about courage, persistence, and purpose. Mentoring other women. With success came a responsibility Mary hadn't expected. Other women started reaching out to her. Women who had been laid off. Women who wanted to start a business. Women who thought it was too late. Mary started mentoring them.
Not for a fee, just by sharing what she had learned. Mary realized she had a responsibility to pass it on. She had a responsibility to show other women that starting a business after retirement was possible.
That age was not a disadvantage. That experience had value. Mary began hosting workshops. She started speaking at events about senior entrepreneurship. She started writing about her journey. And she realized that mentoring was just as fulfilling as the business itself. Because it wasn't just about her. It was about opening doors for other people. It was about showing that new beginnings were possible. It was about creating a movement of women who refused to be discarded by the market. The lesson on resilience. Mary realized that the biggest lesson she had learned wasn't about business, it was about resilience. Resilience wasn't about never falling. It was about falling and getting back up. It was about making mistakes and learning. It was about facing crises and coming out stronger. Mary had fallen many times. She had made pricing mistakes. She had lost clients. She had faced supply chain crises. But every time she fell, she got back up. And every time she got back up, she was stronger. Mary realized that resilience came from living long enough to know crises pass. It came from having seen people lose everything and rebuild. It came from knowing failure is not the end, it's just one step along the way. And that wisdom, born from decades of living, was something no young entrepreneur had. Mary knew her greatest advantage wasn't technical, it was emotional. It was the ability not to give up. It was the ability to see opportunities where others saw only problems.
The personal transformation. Mary stopped to think about who she was now compared to who she had been 3 years earlier. 3 years ago, she had been a scared woman, convinced her life was over. Now she was a woman who had built something from nothing, something with real impact, something with purpose, something with freedom. The transformation wasn't just professional, it was personal. Mary had rediscovered herself. She had discovered that she was creative,
that she was resilient, that she was brave, that she was capable of creating. That rediscovery changed the way she saw herself. She was no longer the woman who had been laid off. She was the woman who had reinvented herself. And that new identity, built from her own actions, not from a job title, was much stronger. Mary realized that the layoff, which had seemed like a tragedy, had actually been a blessing in disguise, because it had forced her to discover who she really was. The message to other people. Mary started thinking about how to share her story, not to brag, but to show other people that fresh starts were possible. That age was not a disadvantage. That experience had value. That making money in retirement wasn't about luck. It was about courage, persistence, and purpose. Mary realized her story mattered, not because it was extraordinary, but because it was real. It was the story of an ordinary woman who had faced an ordinary situation and found a solution. And if she could do it, other people could too.
Mary started writing about her journey. She started recording videos. She started speaking at events. And she realized that sharing her story was just as important as building the business, because there were millions of people like her, people who had been laid off, people who are unhappy, older people who thought it was too late.
The lesson about purpose. Mary realized the biggest difference between her business and many others was purpose. Her business wasn't just about making money. It was about solving a real problem. It was about making a difference. And that purpose was what kept her motivated. It was what attracted clients. It was what attracted employees. It was what attracted partners.
Mary knew there were many ways to make money online for retirees. There were many businesses that could generate side income, but few had a real purpose. Few solved a problem that truly mattered.
And Mary knew that difference, having a purpose beyond money, was what made her business special. It was what made it sustainable. It was what made it meaningful. Mary realized that if she had started only to make money, she would have given up in the first few months. But because she had purpose, she kept going. Because she had purpose, she grew. Because she had purpose, she thrived.
The vision for the future. Mary started thinking about the future. It was no longer about surviving. It was about thriving. It was about growing. It was about making an impact. Mary had ambitious plans. She wanted to expand into more cities. She wanted to transform more waste. She wanted to create more jobs. She wanted to mentor more women. She wanted to show the world that starting a business after retirement was not only possible, it was desirable. It was a way to use decades of experience to create something meaningful. Mary realized her journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. It had begun when she was laid off. It had begun when she decided not to give up. It had begun when she realized she had value. And now she was only at the beginning of something much bigger. Mary knew there was much more to do. There was much more to learn. There was much more to create. And that perspective, that the best was still ahead, was what kept her energized, motivated, and alive. The rebirth closing. Mary's arc. Mary was in her office looking at two photos side by side. The first was her as a director at a corporate event, wearing that polished professional smile that never quite reached her eyes. The second was recent, her in her factory with her team wearing a genuine smile that came from within. In that moment, Mary realized just how far she had come. It wasn't just a career change, it was a life change. It was an identity change, it was a purpose change. She had started as a woman who lost everything, discarded, ignored, underestimated. She ended as a woman who built everything. And that transformation, which began with a plain brown envelope, turned out to be the best thing that could have happened. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. The layoff was not the end. It was the beginning. The end of the illusion that you need a title to have value. The end of the belief that an older person is on their way out of the game. The end of the idea that experience is obsolete. Mary turned that fear into courage. She turned that anger into action. She turned that envelope into a business that not only supports her but makes her happy, that makes her feel alive, that makes her feel useful. Mary knows something that changed everything. She is not at the end of her career. She is at the beginning of a new one. A career she controls. A career with purpose. A career that matters. But here's the most important part. Mary is not special. She is not a rare case. She is not an exception. Mary is an ordinary woman who faced an ordinary situation and found a solution. And if she could do it, you can too. Because age is not a disadvantage. It's a hidden advantage. Because experience has value. Because you still have a lot to offer. Because it is never too late to start over. Because it is never too late to create. Because it is never too late to thrive. You worked for 35 years. You built a career. You proved your worth. And now you have the chance to do something even bigger. Create something that is yours. Something with purpose. Something that matters.
And it all starts with one decision. The same decision Mary made that night, looking in the mirror. I will not define myself by this. I will reinvent myself.